freedom isn't free, and if you don't exercise your rights, you will lose them, and they are being encroached upon right now by the institutions. They have been for many years. In fact,
Welcome to today's show, everybody. I am thrilled to have an amazing guest here today, an author, keynote speaker, and a homeschool mom of 3 kiddos who are now all grown. Today is going to be an amazing day full of wisdom. I have Sam Sorbo here today, who is a multifaceted talent and a leading advocate for parental freedom and the protection of children, which you guys know I am a huge advocate for children. She began her journey at Duke University studying biochemical engineering before transferring into an international fashion model and Hollywood actress. While filming in New Zealand, she met her husband, Kevin Sorbo, star of Hercules, and they married soon after. Sam dedicated over a decade to home educating their 3 children, which deepened her insights into modern schooling. Girl, you're in the right place today. Now an award-winning film and TV actress, prolific best-selling author, and dynamic keynote speaker, she focuses on empowering parents to reevaluate traditional education. As a leading fighter for parental rights, her mission is to help families break free from the limitations of the modern school system, promoting a freedom mindset that fosters happier parents and smarter kids for stronger families. Sam hosts the Sam Sorbo Show on Patriot TV and her own podcast, where she frequently shares her commentary on politics, religion, culture, and education, inspiring audiences to create meaningful change in their children's lives. We are so happy to have you on the show today. And in particular, I was excited to do a deep dive on parental rights, because here in Colorado, actually in the last election, we had something on the ballot that was talking about children's rights, which is something we're going to start hearing a lot more about. But first, I want to get to know you a little bit. Sam, would you share with us how your homeschooling journey started?
Sure. My little boy was going through 1st and 2nd grade in our local little public school. We moved to that community basically for the schools, for the lifestyle. It was a little bit more rural than the inner city, or the city, I should say. We were never really in the inner city, but in the city. And they weren't getting the job done. And, I tell people this story, and I tell them, I'm not really sure what I was expecting, but it wasn't that. It wasn't, that he was in a classroom with 5 very misbehaved children that ran the teacher frazzled. It wasn't that he was the kid who was supposed to help his neighbor with his math so that the teacher didn't have to. It wasn't the stupid book reports that they assigned that I never received back graded, so I had no way of gauging how well he was performing vis-a-vis other students, which is, of course, how we function as parents. Like, how is my child doing on the broad metrics of how children are supposed to be doing? And so now that's actually something that I speak against. Stop comparing yourself. You're fine. Your kids are fine, because we get so caught up in that comparison. So at the end of 2nd grade, there were a couple of things. The book reports was one. There was also, she sent home work with my son that he wasn't supposed to do in school. And we were on a trip, so she sent it with us. And so all of a sudden, I was like the nasty substitute teacher who was making him do the stuff that he doesn't have to do in school. And I just felt like the whole thing was a bit of a setup. And I said to my husband, I think I could fail at homeschooling him. In other words, I could fail the whole academics part, but he'd still be better off as a person. We'd still be leaving behind the worst of the worst kind of thing. And of course, it's worse today than it was back then. A lot has changed. That was before Common Core. He's 23 now. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to say I never looked back. It's not true. So I commiserate with parents who feel wholly inadequate, who want to quit, who don't think that they have any idea what they're doing. I was one of them. And I'm here to tell you, it doesn't matter, because you are in the service of your children. That's the most important thing. If you love them and raise them to be people like you are, you're way ahead of the game. The academics are all secondary to that.
Absolutely. I'm a huge advocate of having the mamas that I mentor, to first ask themselves and figure out their why, because that's the compass for everything moving forward. It gets you through the hard days, and truly understanding that, I think, also helps a mama define what an education is. Because when you actually start asking people, well, what do you think an education should be? They start describing basically everything but the school system, and they just walk right into it. And so I think that's really powerful. And you're so right. As a mama, I coach a lot of moms into not quitting. We help a lot of moms who are homeschooling teens, and they're like, what do I do? And so it gets really hard. Now, I want to talk about the education system first with you today, before we get into parents' rights and some lingo that is kind of bandied about lately among politicians. What do you think about our school system? Because I get a lot of flack on social media personally about, you shouldn't be putting your energy towards homeschooling. You should be trying to fix the system. Christy, you need to be doing this. You need to be doing that. What are your views on the system? And do you think that that's an approach that we should be taking, rather than, as they are viewing it, this is not the truth, as they are viewing it, pulling our kids and running? As a homeschool mom who values a family together approach and leans towards the classical and Charlotte Mason styles, I often struggle to bring my educational vision to life with my kids' diverse ages and learning needs. With all our interests and super packed schedule, bridging that gap between the dreamy homeschool I want and reality, I gotta be honest, it's a challenge. Now, yes, I know perfection isn't the goal, but if you're listening and you could use a little easing of your mental load in your day-to-day, I found a resource that has become the quiet hero of our routine, and it could be a really great option for you too. BJU Press Homeschool Curriculum. Now, many think that BJU Press Homeschool is solely an all-in-one option, and though it does excel in that role, did you know you can also opt for specific courses and tailor them to fit your family's needs, just as I have? BJU Press Homeschool provides the perfect balance of structure and flexibility, and easily complements my family's mixed age, family together on the couch learning style. They are second to none in integrating a biblical worldview, stimulating critical thinking, and offering tons of hands-on activities in the lessons. To find out how BJU Press Homeschool can come alongside you in your homeschooling goals too, visit bjupresshomeschool.com or click the link in the show notes.
Yeah, no, pull your kids and run. I don't care if that's, hey, that's their truth. No, pull your kids and run. And if you want to stay and fight to fix a system that's not broken, good luck. That's all I have to say. System's not broken. It's working exactly as it was designed. It is designed to churn out non-thinking widgets, automatrons that do exactly what they're told. Obedient little soldiers. And unfortunately, that's not the way to succeed in the real world. And that's why we're seeing the majority of students now that are graduating college who can't get a job, much less have a career, because of what they've chosen to study, and no one is in the colleges advising them that maybe Middle Eastern basket weaving of the 16th century is not the best choice if they want to get a job when they graduate so they can pay off their loans. I mean, the whole thing just seems at this point like a setup. And so, yes, grab your children and run away from that. And my advice is to not do anything that the schools are doing, because at this point, to me, it's all tainted with the fact that the schools are an abject failure. We are now 37th in the world academically, so clearly they're not drilling into the academics. They're completely failing on that metric. Oregon passed a law a couple years back. It's a couple years already. You don't need to read or do math to graduate high school. Well, then really, what's the point? What I love about what you said is that you talk to parents. Let's sit down and define education, which incidentally is a good portion of my book, because that's the conversation that we have to have. What is education? Because school is not education. And in fact, school is the opposite of education. And so if you want your child to be a free thinker, if you want him to be creative, to be able to sort of create out of thin air a job for himself, he needs to be a creative thinker, right? And in fact, the jobs that they're preparing kids for today, won't exist in 20, 30 years. Basically, they're preparing kids for jobs that already existed, 10 or 20 years ago that are going to be phased out. I mean, the whole thing is absurd. So if you're looking forward for your children, the best thing you can do for them is set them free so that they can explore and discover for themselves. And I'll leave with this. If we think about education, children are intrinsically curious, right? So at 2 years old, why, mommy? Why? How come? How many? Why? Where? What for? How come? Right? And then we knock that out of them the moment that they hit school. No, you sit down and you shut up. You be quiet now. Teacher's talking. No, there's no talking. You be quiet. And if you want to ask a question, you better raise your hand. And all of that is a deterrent to learning. So we're handicapping our children the moment that they enter the school doors. And I say to parents, I'm not sure where we started to doubt the intrinsic nature of children, that they're so curious that they'll learn whatever they want to know. They're going to go find out. If we don't get in their way by sending them to school, we've lost confidence in just the design of the child. And I want to get us back to that, to this wondrous mechanism that every child is born with, this curiosity, this insatiable curiosity that we just knock out of them the moment that they start school. I say that's wrong. I say that's abusive. That's what I counsel parents today. You're going to start homeschooling? Okay, don't do the stuff that the schools do. Don't buy curriculum. Don't dig into that, like teaching them about the feudalist system if that isn't the thing that's interesting them. Don't force feed them. Don't coerce them. Get them involved in the things they're interested in. And then once they're invested in learning those things, you can feed in the other things. Hey, if you're really interested in cars, you probably should learn a little bit of physics because that's how motors work. You want to learn how a motor works? That kind of education. And then you've created somebody who is more in the vein of Elon Musk, who wants to just go do everything that he possibly can.
So were you a little bit unschooly raising your kids?
I did it wrong. So I totally schooled them. And by the way, like I admit it. So my oldest, I schooled him. I found Classical Conversations. It is a highly academic program. I loved it. I'm an academic, so it totally appealed to me. Wasn't really his bag, but I forced it on him. But here's the difference. So when I was schooling my kids, they were done by 1:00 in the afternoon. They did not have 7.5 hours of boring school and then another hour, 2 or 3 of homework. They got their work done in the first four hours of our day, 9 to 1, basically. When they got older, they had extra work, obviously. But the formative years of learning, they had a lot of freedom despite my drilling into the academics. It wasn't until my daughter, who is an artist. And so when she was 5, I said to her, hey, if you like to draw, you should purpose to draw 15 minutes a day. Just put that in front of you and make that a thing that you do for yourself every day. Well, pretty soon she was drawing 3 hours a day. And so when she got to the age of 11 or 12, I kind of hit my knees. I was like, I don't know how to teach this. I'm not an artist. My second's an engineer, so I can do that. My first is an actor, so I can do that. Actually, now they're both actors. Go figure. But I knew how to navigate for them. And I like to call parents, you're the navigators. You're not the teacher. You're not the teacher. And this is how I know. Because I said, okay, I don't know how to teach art. So what am I going to do? And somebody said, well, get her an anatomy class. I'm like, that's perfect. I'll go find an anatomy instructor and I'll delegate and then they'll be the teacher and I will have done my job of teaching through them, right? And I go up to her room and I say anatomy class. She goes, oh, with this sort of bless your heart, mommy, And she pulls out her sketchbook and shows me a double-page spread of the interior workings of the human knee in various positions with labels.
Wow.
And I'm like, you're already teaching yourself anatomy? And she goes, yeah, mommy. I mean, if I want to be an artist, I need to know that. And so my point is, she knew better than I did because I had given her the freedom. Now, I was still doing academics with her, but like I said, we were done before lunchtime every day, basically. And so every afternoon, She was free to pursue her interests. Now, a lot of parents are out there saying, yeah, but Sam, an artist can't make money. Yeah, that's true. But my highest value for my child is not the amount of money that she can make. If I raise a good person, she can always get a job because she knows how to serve. And so she can always get a job. Will it be the best job? Will it be the corner office at Goldman Sachs? No, but let's face it. If that wasn't her bent, she was never going to get there anyway. That's not my goal for her. And even if she could get there because, say, I put so much pressure on her that I said, you need to be a stockbroker. You need to, right? I'm setting her up to be miserable for the rest of her life. Why would I do that to her? My job is not to dictate to my children who they are. My job is to help them discover who they are. It's a completely different mindset. It's a paradigm shift that I am trying to get parents to understand. And what happens is when you shift into that and you're like, oh, so I'm my child's advocate. I'm a navigator. My job is to discover who they are and help them discover who they are. Then, my gosh, like, hold on, fasten your seatbelt because it's a wild ride. It's an amazing ride and it's so rewarding. Whereas if I was trying to control my children and saying, no, you have to do this and then you have to do this and the path to success leads only through the institutions and, suck up to that teacher. Even if he's lying to you, you better agree with him because your grade is at stake, young lady, or whatever. That's just stress. We don't need that. Now, I will say I did a grammar program with my kids that was fabulous. I highly recommend it. It's in a couple of my books actually, because I just recommend it. Unpaid, by the way, but I just loved it. And it had a writing program. With my first, he did every writing assignment. By the time I hit it with my second, I realized he doesn't have to do every writing assignment. And so I slacked off a little bit, which was fine. But my first he's just finishing his second book. Maybe there's a correlation. I'm not really sure, but he's writing books. My second one is not writing books. Not that he should be writing books. I'm just saying. So maybe my digging in was beneficial in a different way with my first, or maybe not. I really can't say.
Yeah. Now, I'm so curious to ask you, because you are an advocate for parental freedom. Why are parents' rights so crucial for us as homeschoolers to understand?
Freedom isn't free. And if you don't exercise your rights, you will lose them. And they are being encroached upon right now by the institutions. They have been for many years. In fact, so you're talking about parental rights, but let's step out and take a wider scope right now for a minute and understand that generationally, we have been attending school for 100 years. The first high school was established in the late 1800s. That was the first one. And so basically from 1900 or let's say 1924, for the past 100 years, we've been in school. That means we have not had a parented generation for 5 generations. And so your parents weren't parented. Their parents weren't really parented. And, I talk to people and they argue back and they say, oh no, my mother was very strong. She came down and talked to the teachers. She was involved in the PTA. Yes, but you did not spend time with your parents because you were at school for that amount. And I've heard it's calculated at 16,000 hours that we give up with our children when we send them to school. 16,000 hours. Now, it takes, according to some, it takes 10,000 hours for mastery. They're mastering something with your children that you're not a part of. And my contention is it divides the child from the parent. It definitely separates the child from the parent, but it also damages the child's relationship with the parent, because when you drop your child off at school, you're saying to the child tacitly, if not out loud, I don't know, trust them. They know better than I do. They have the authority to tell you what's right and what's wrong. And that's why your authority is challenged in your homes. The school has come between you and the child. And you don't know what the child is hearing at school. You You have no idea what that teacher is saying to that. Oh, our teachers are handpicked. Really? Really? They go through like your teachers, everything that the teacher has ever said and done before. No, your school needs to hire somebody. They pick the prettiest or the person on paper who fits the mold or, graduated from wherever. They just pick somebody. And maybe they've done a good job and maybe they haven't done a good job picking somebody. You just don't know. So unless you go to the school, take the teacher out to lunch, visit her at home just because I don't think you really know somebody until you visit them at home. That's like my own little metric. Like somebody says, oh, how well do you know them? And my metric is, well, I've never been to their house, but other than that, I think they're a nice person, We just sort of accept things on face value. I think because we went to school and we were trained to do so. So in that way, the school damaged us because we're a lot less discerning, I think, than we should be. Like there's so many different factors that go into this. So back to your parental rights. We don't even know what it is to be a parent, much less the rights that we, supposedly have. I have a friend who has 2 boys and his wife left him and she decided that one of the boys was transgender. He's like 7 years old. So she is transitioning him. She moved him out of state, went to the sanctuary transition state of California, and he has just lost all of his parental rights, all of them. He may have supervised visitation, which he is abjectly refusing because when you have a supervisor there, they can make up anything that they want. And it tells the child, it broadcasts to the child, your father is not safe and I have to be here to supervise. And so he's refusing that. He's basically just lost his children. So when we talk about parental rights, you can lose them like that. You can lose them like that.
Before we continue, I want to share with you a program that has been a game changer for our family. At our learning center, we instructed and helped kids through pretty much every program on the market. So we know firsthand just how important a solid math foundation is for our kids' futures. Finding the right homeschool math curriculum that didn't compromise academic excellence, but also didn't put me and my kids through the ringer was a challenge. Until one day, I found CTC Math. You guys, the rest was history. First off, it's a mastery-based program, which means your child gets a full grasp of the material. It's also loaded with mixed reviews, ensuring your kids don't forget anything they've learned. The questions are adaptive too, which keeps students confident and progressing at their own pace. But the best part, all the teaching, grading, and testing, done for you. With CTC Math, there is no compromise on excellence. Your child gets a top-notch education, and you just made your homeschool life easier. Visit CTC Math to get your free trial today. Is your child struggling with attention, memory, reading, writing, or math? If you're experiencing this, you know how heart-wrenching it is to watch them face these hurdles. You've poured love, time, and attention into their education, yet the struggle persists, leaving you feeling stuck and desperately searching for answers. You guys, I want you to know about Learning RX, a proven program designed to help your child's cognitive skills, enabling them to think faster, learn more easily, and perform at their best. I'm talking getting real long-term help here with things like ADHD and dyslexia. Learning RX is backed by 35 years of research and their results are transformative. Use code HOME50 for $50 off your cognitive skills assessment. Go to learningrx.com or click the link in the show notes. Yes, and in Texas this past year, there was a medical kidnapping of a young woman, a homeschooler family. And I think that what parents don't realize, and honestly, they don't even think through this when you just do what you always did, what you did, what your grandparents did. And that is when your kid turns 5 or even earlier, you just send them through. I don't think people realize how symbolic those doors are. When you let your child walk through the doors, you are abdicating your rights in so many ways. They don't let you come on campus. You can't observe the classroom. You can't do this, that, the other. Okay, wait a minute. Last I checked, these were my kids. And make no mistake, listeners, when you start hearing language about children's rights and protecting children, it's not children's rights. It's a transfer of rights from the parent to the government. and they want rights over our kids because children can't really make wise decisions for themselves. A 5-year-old can't, you know what I'm saying? Here, where I live in Colorado, the big thing was the government was kind of trying to inch in on our curriculum selection. But that's kind of where it starts, I think, because they were being, well, of course, every child in Colorado has the right to an education, and we are the ones that need to make sure the parents are doing that. I want you to speak a little bit to this general distrust, not just of homeschooling families. There's a lot of societal distrust of homeschooling families. And this is a curveball. Sorry, but I know you'll be fine. But the general distrust of parents, like, where did this even come from? We can't decide what's best for our kids. The government needs to step in.
Because we've become so dependent on our government, now the government takes responsibility for us and wants to make sure that it is, providing the proper resources for us because we've asked it to. And I would love to get away from that. I'm very hopeful that we will see, in a sense, a morning in America, a new dawn for parents to be more parental and less government dependent. And unfortunately, it's the slow creep of socialism. So school itself is a socialist proposition. You take money from everybody to feed it to only the few families with children, and so on. And then the more that happens, of course, because school itself is socialist just in its inception, of course, it teaches socialism, and it teaches more and more socialism and less of the opposite of socialism, which is our system. And so now we have government schools that won't teach the citizens that the power resides with the citizen, because it's not in their interest. It's not in the government's interest to tell us that we hold the power. And so we have to get back to foundation or fundamentals, right? And that's a hard thing to do because we're kind of walking back we bought into this idea that it's some security blanket. Like, we bought into the idea that if you go to college, you will have a job and a career. There's no proof of that. There's less and less, actually. And so we still rely on the metrics that from the studies that they did in the 1950s, that students who dropped out became, ne'er-do-wells, smokers, at the corner billiards store, trouble. We got trouble here in River City. And then the people who went all the way through high school, went to college, they got a job and they worked for 50 years and they, resigned with a gold watch. They retired with a gold watch. Those days are gone. We're back in the wild, wild west. This is the founding of America. This is, you pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, you make it happen. And it's exciting if you can embrace that insecurity. But you have to first convince yourself that the false sense of security that you have with the government is indeed a false sense of security, which it is.
It absolutely is. Yeah. One of the master classes I teach is on fostering independence with your kiddos. And my main argument for that is all of the things and all of those skills and soft skills are going to make them successful human beings later. Like, I hate to say it, but even if your kiddo is interested in accounting, nowadays, they're going to need to also have entrepreneurial skills. It's just, they have to now. You're right. Those days are gone. And I've said this before, is the system is still preparing kids for a world that literally does not even exist anymore.
Right.
At all, right? Like, here, I'm an educator. I have a master's degree in history, and I had to learn how to be a podcaster. I had to learn how to master social media to get people to listen to my podcast. I had to write all of these things. We joke, because my husband and I are both entrepreneurs, successful, and we joke like, oh yeah, our kids are basically going to have MBAs by the time they graduate high school from us. And I'm like, great. Yeah.
There's a lot of value in that. What I ask parents is, do you think you know more than the 23-year-old who's teaching your child right now? And the answer inevitably is yes. Then why are you sending your child to a 23-year-old who knows nothing except classroom management? And you say your kids are going to be, entrepreneurs, or they'll have their MBAs, right? I know a young woman who's studying for a business degree. And so I asked her, how many of your professors have actually run their own business?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I want to ask you a question that there's a purpose behind it, because I know that you are actress, a model, your husband is an actor too. You mentioned your kids. And we were in LA. We were in West LA for 20 years. Most of our clients were A-listers and billionaires. We taught their kids, people, names you all know, and want to talk about the social sacrifice that we make as homeschoolers. And this is how I think it's really relatable, because one thing that I think a lot of mamas don't expect, it doesn't make them stop homeschooling, but what can happen when a mom starts homeschooling and a mom pulls her kids is she will lose friends. She will. Her entire social landscape can really change. Do you have any words of wisdom? Could you share with us a little bit about your story, maybe sacrifices you made? Because now that you're at the end of the road with your homeschooling, of course, you're on fire with everything else. But looking back, like, was that worth it? In my book, I call it the storming phase. It's to be expected. I try to prepare moms for it, because people get very threatened when a mom decides to homeschool her kids. If they're really insecure with themselves emotionally, they'll like put judgment on themselves and, oh, that's just too much work. She's crazy for doing that. And you will lose friends. Would you speak to that a little bit? What happened to you guys when you guys took a stance in Hollywood of all places? Cause I was there, girl. And you kind of keep your mouth shut if you want to stay in business.
Well, that's true. And we didn't. And that's why we don't live there anymore. But I will say that there is a level of disdain for a mother who pulls her kids out to homeschool because the other mothers feel convicted and they resent it. And so then they apply this, well, you think you're better than us because our kids still go to school or what have you. I never gave a flip. I encourage parents, that's their problem. Let them do their own thing. I did lose friends. We wrote about it in our book, True Faith. I lost friends over politics. And it was like a weird, it wasn't an actual acknowledgement. People stopped returning my phone call, and it was like, oh, I wonder if it was that event that we went to together and she saw a side of me that she was like never going to speak to me again. I'm thinking about one person in particular. But I want to go back to a word that you used. You used the word sacrifice. And I think it's important that we dissect that word just a little bit. So what do you mean by sacrifice?
Well, I think in the short term, choosing to homeschool does mean that you are going to sacrifice the social landscape that you previously had. It's also a decision to give that up. And I think that blindsides a lot of mamas. And as quickly as possible in my community, I try to plug them in to your new friends are here. Your new friends are right around the corner. Just hang in there. This is the storming phase. Hi there, podcast family. If our episodes bring a smile to your face, challenge you, or spark your thoughts, tap that like and subscribe button to stay connected with us. Also, we'd truly love to hear your voice in the comments. Your insights and stories are what makes this community special. And not only does it allow us to hear you, but your engagement helps us reach more people and spread our message. So go ahead and don't be shy. Like, subscribe, and comment.
It's such a great, valuable point. And I talk a lot about the word sacrifice because our culture now considers sacrifice a net loss. But sacrifice is not a net loss because we live in a free society. And so when you sacrifice something, it is for something greater. And so I think that the focus has to be on, yes, you're losing that because it had much less value than your relationship with your children. And if you need some more social interaction, you'll find it because it will be valuable enough that you'll figure out how to get it. It's that simple. It's not more complicated than that. So, we sacrificed, I sacrificed lunch with the girls. I remember one year when school was back in and I was still on all the text threads. It was probably the first year I started homeschooling. It might have been the second year after I started homeschooling, but I was still on all the text threads. And I got the note, hey, first day of school, let's meet at, Billy Joe's to cry into our mimosas, cry face. And I thought, this is really sad that mothers are celebrating dumping their kids off. Like they were gleeful to be done with their kids. And I was always so hugely grateful to be with my kids. The only reason that I brought my child to school was because I thought it was good for him. It wasn't good for me. And I think our culture has accepted too readily this idea that, kids are, blah, who wants them, who needs them? They're so annoying or whatever. And that breaks my heart because they are so tone deaf to understand why they have a little child who acts out. Do you know what the terrible twos are? I mean, we have a name for it, right? Terrible twos, and they throw tantrums because they can't get their way. The terrible twos are just children who are exhausted. You don't give up the nap. Don't ever give up the nap. I'm serious.
No, I'm laughing because I had twins. You do not give up the nap.
You don't give up the nap, especially right? I mean, I wanted the nap. It's not the kid so much. Me, I needed the nap, but the kid needs the nap. And so when the kid naps from 2 to 3 or whatever it is, right after lunch, whatever, then 5 o'clock hits and the kid's just fine, or 4 o'clock. But if the child doesn't nap during the day, 4 o'clock hits, that child is frustrated and tired. And the slightest thing is going to set the child off. And it's because we've lost, I guarantee you, if we went back 100 years, the parents of that day would be like appalled at the way we treat our children. I guarantee you 100 years ago, parents would be like, they don't let that child nap? That's terrible. That's child abuse. That child should be napping. Every child should nap. 2, 3, 4. I had a child who wanted to quit the nap and I had to trick him back into napping. And now he's 20. And he'll say to me, Mom, I'm really tired. I'm going to go up and take a nap. He's 20. He knows. He's like, well, the nap's a good thing. So, we're getting so much wrong. And I think that if you dig in and you invest in being a parent and parenting your children, and that means homeschooling, right? Where they're synonymous at this point, you will come out the other side so much better off. You personally, the children personally, and the whole family unit.
Yeah. And, and I don't know if you know this, but I run a community. It's a nationwide online community called Thrive Homeschool Community. And we do I do a ton of deschooling in there and also helping moms set up their homeschool. And we have special spaces for like veteran homeschool moms who, cause we struggle with burnout and all sorts of places. But I gotta say, so much with the coaching that we do in there has to do with parenting. And I think it's because we don't understand what parenting is. And one thing I fight for, and I will never stop, is if you are not enjoying your kids, if the majority of your day is awful, tantruming, antagonism, everyone's kind of upset, I'm not going to tell you what to do right now, but I am going to say, fight with all of your might to enjoy your kids, to figure out a way that you love being with them every second of the day. Not saying we don't need breaks from caregiving and little respite days here and there, but when we set intentionality towards our parenting skills, that feeds into the homeschooling. And then we're just really loving our lifestyle. My youngest right now is 8 and we are just, I was telling Scott last night, we were going to bed and I am just like, I had the best day. Like our 3 girls, we went, we made ourselves chai lattes, and then me and another daughter, we like dirty chais. We put our coffee in the chai, and then we went to the local Goodwill. Okay, get this. We went to the Goodwill for the only thing they could get was something that they could turn into a Christmas decoration. Right? So like repurpose or like to paint or whatever, right? We had just the best afternoon. No behavior problem. Our days aren't perfect, but what I can say is that most of our days are really, they feel like heaven on earth, but the work that I had to like undo like past stuff from, and my parents are great. My parents are Christians and they're still married and they tried their best. There's no harm done, but it was a different generation and I did not know how to parent. when I started. And then I fell into the trap when we were early parents of like hyper authoritarianism and punitive parenting. And so there's been a lot of healing and apologizing, especially to our oldest regarding that. And we feel like we've really kind of hit our stride and are constantly working on connection. But the one thing, and before I want to hear about your book, by the way, which is why I even asked you on, but I do want to say for any mamas here listening to this, and the days are really hard because it's just either there's refusal with the homeschooling or there's just battling and things like that. I just want to encourage you to fight to really like your kids. I know you already love them, but fight to like them. And there's tools in Thrive for that. There's books you can buy, all sorts of things. And I always tell people on my podcast, email me. We answer all of our emails and we will lead you to resources that can help you. But Sam, you have a new book out. Will you tell us about your book?
So my book, Parents Guide to Homeschool, and I'm holding it up. It's actually a workbook. This is to get you to rethink the way that you think about education, because we've been getting it wrong for way too long. And that's why you're struggling with your kids. That's why you're struggling with your kids, is you weren't taught how to parent, because none of us were parented really. And you were taught a whole bunch of stuff about what education is that's wrong. And so you can do better. And that's what the book's about. And I'm very excited. So, because people are loving it. And I got an endorsement from Tucker Carlson, which sort of beats everything. Sam Sorbo knows homeschooling and her family is a testament to the fact that it works. And by the way, that's true. My kids are amazing. And I can hardly take credit, because the credit that I take is that I had enough wherewithal to set them free. And that's my message to parents. Set them free. Set yourself free. If you're fighting with your kid to learn something, stop. Pick something that the child wants to learn. Dig into that. Stop the fight. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Awesome. And then where can everybody find you and your book?
Oh yeah, a couple things. So I do have a community online. It's called sam.locals.com. And people can join. I've got a coupon code running right now, FREEDOM. If you enter the code FREEDOM, you get 3 months for free. So samsorbo.locals.com. It's on Locals. I'm also promoting a family trip to DC, which you should come. We're going to do basically the tour of DC. And so we'll be the Smithsonian. We'll go to Mount Vernon. We'll see where Lincoln died. We'll see where he was shot. We'll go to the Spy Museum. We'll see the memorials. DC's a fantastic place, and there's a lot of history there that's American history that's important, and it's nice for kids to sort of touch and feel it. And I did this with my kids when they were little, and I'm excited to do it again. It's in March, and the way you find out about that is go to sorbostudios.com is where you find all the books and all the information about everything that Kevin and I have been up to, and some of the things that our kids are up to too. So
great. And then is that DC trip a homeschooling trip?
I'm not saying that it's only homeschoolers, but it'll predominantly be homeschoolers because it's during school. So if somebody calls and says, if somebody signs up and their kids are enrolled in school, there's nothing, I'm not like weeding through people and saying, oh no, your child is enrolled. I'm not checking up on people, but it'll be basically homeschoolers. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we'll put everything in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Sam.
Well, it was great to be here.